Hello, beautiful people. My name is Emma.
And I'm MC.
And we are your hosts of the G-Forces podcast. So, this morning was the Bahrain Grand Prix, aka Sakir. And it was good. I enjoyed it quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people were predicting that this is going to be the most exciting race we have all season. I think it shows that the drivers know this track really well through their eons of testing and whatnot. So I think we saw a lot of confidence in drivers that, they haven't had that yet in the prior 3 races.
But I do think that the weather added a nice little spiciness to the weekend because testing was extremely cold in Bahrain, not expected. Normally it's much warmer than that. And so basically everything that they learned from testing was not going to really help them this weekend, at least for like tire strategy, how their cars would perform, whatnot. And this weekend it was very hot. So like FP1 and FP3, it was like 30 plus degrees Celsius air temperature, and then the track temperature was even hotter than that. And so basically FP1 and FP3 were kind of throwaway sessions because they didn't help you learn anything about how the weekend was going to go because quali and the race were in colder conditions.
Yeah, because for those that this is their first time watching, this one takes place at kind of like dusk. So it does get darker, the temperature drops, the lights end up going onto the track. So it's hard to compare.
Yeah.
I know that F1 TV did interview James Vowles a bit, and he mentioned like some teams have said that they're like throwing away all their data, and he's like, obviously we're not going to do that. Like there's something you can always take, but it's hard to make comparisons. And I feel like the weather has been pretty drastic every round of racing so far.
Nobody really the weather is not what it usually is, I feel like.
Yeah, for sure.
What was it in Australia? Oh, rain.
Yeah.
Then for China, I think it was average. I think it was fine for China.
Yeah.
But then Japan was like much colder than expected, and the grass kept going on fire.
Yeah.
This weekend, much warmer than expected.
Yeah, so it's definitely throwing a wrench, I feel like, in like a lot of people's predictions, but
I actually like that.
But no, I think that this race, it does make me nervous that people have said they think it's the best one this season because
people are a little crazy about that. I'm sorry. That's a crazy thing to say this early in the season.
Well, I think it's just the perfect track for action. Like it is, I think a lot of people are starting to get nervous about how sleepy some of the races are. It is a big talk, but I feel like it's a big talk at the beginning of every season.
At the beginning of last season, we thought that Max was going to win every single race because he did win the first few races, or the majority of the first few races. And so we were like, oh, great, this is going to be so boring this season. And the second half of the season was crazy.
Yeah, so, and I mean, it's been pretty crazy so far, I feel like.
I mean, in 4 races, we have 3 different race winners.
Yeah, pretty good stats.
Well, including the sprint race, we have 5 races, 4 different race winners.
Yeah.
And only 2 of them are from the same team.
Yeah.
Yeah?
I think so, yeah.
No. 3, 4...
It doesn't
4
matter.
race winners, 5 races. Because Lewis, Oscar Lando, and Max.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were right.
I was right. Is there any drama that we want to talk about this week? I don't think there really has been.
No, we're just in the middle of a triple header, so I feel like everyone's just kind of trying to get through it.
Oh, there were comments that were brought into this weekend about Carlos's bathroom fine.
Yeah.
And just like people discussing about fines in general with the FIA and the ridiculousness of it, which we'll get to that.
I think a lot of people still have the same consistent issue, is that where is this money being allocated to?
And there's no consistency.
There's no consistency. You don't pay for full-time marshals that travel to every single race, which in my opinion would make sense.
It's crazy that they don't do that.
I mean, we're even seeing now, so right now we're filming at 1:27 Central Standard Time, so the race ended
about an hour and a half
ago. to our knowledge, there still hasn't been a decision or any understanding on what's going on with George Russell's penalty that we'll get into when we get to the race. And listen, I understand what happened to George is something that needs probably pretty thorough investigation, but we've had issues in the past. An
There was
issue
something that happened
affected
this weekend that was
quali
crazy.
that, you need to be making live action decisions, not hours after an event or, once someone can't move on. And so I think the biggest issue that people are having is, where is this money going to?
Yeah.
It is a lot of money. And so for those that are confused, it was a total of 20,000 euro, but from my understanding, he only has to pay 10,000 euro now and then an additional 10,000 throughout the season or at some other point. The thing is, and I ranted about this last season, so if you want to hear me go
I'm sorry,
on,
but when you break that down in regular people terms, that is a year of rent for me.
that is an astronomically obscene amount of money.
That's absurd.
And then it was further clarified that he was actually only about 5 seconds late. So I'm sitting here thinking he missed the entire national anthem or what? No, he literally was 5 seconds late to the point that he needed to be at. Listen, I understand if someone is being disrespectful to a country's national anthem. That totally makes sense. There's no right or wrong in that. It's clearly respect the country that you're in. But that's not what he was doing. And I could rant about this for a very long time. But at the end of the day, FIA, you need to just really disclose where this money is going to, why you're charging these obscene fines. And listen, I get not every single driver is a multimillionaire,
Well,
it's just, it's obscene in this world, in this economy, to be charging people that much money for 5 seconds late because of the bathroom.
So something interesting that Sam Collins mentioned during one of the practice sessions, and you mentioned this last time, we actually really like watching the practice sessions because it's kind of like a podcast. The commentators will just talk, and either they'll talk about what's going on the track or what's going on in the paddock, but they'll also just talk about stuff going on in motorsport.
And historically, they really talk about, similar issues or similar things at a different point in history in the sport, so it's kind of nice.
Yeah, but the reason why I bring this up is because Sam Collins mentioned during one of the practice sessions that in years past, when you had to pay a fine like this, the money would go directly to the FIA improvement fund or something like that, where it would go towards literally updating tracks around the world and the actual paddocks and just the grounds of the actual circuits, as well as the money would go towards creating driver development academies. And Sam was like, I think that was a fantastic use of the money and it makes sense, and I think the drivers would be okay with doing that. But now, over the last, I'd say 5 years, I think it's been, people have no idea where the money is going. And I don't know if that's whoever's in charge of the FIA kind of decides where the money goes. And so, because I feel like it's ever since the new president has been ahead that people have no idea where the money's going.
Well, and it's my understanding that it's the tracks are privately owned, so it's now the track's job to take care of it, except for I think the only one that is sponsored by F1 legitimately is Vegas or something around those marks. But that is the issue that so many people are having. And I'm sure that we're one of multiple podcasts.
I think it's going to be a topic that's brought up literally every single race weekend this year, because it already has been.
Yeah, I mean, it started off with the swearing, that's ridiculous. Now it's going into this. I mean, Kevin Magnussen said it perfectly last season. While there are some drivers who can possibly afford that, there's a lot of drivers that this is an exorbitant amount of money that you are asking, especially when you've already capped out teams, you know? So, I don't know. You all know my thoughts. I could scream into this microphone, but I won't, to, move the podcast along.
I think that we are going to get started on the practice sessions.
right, so plot twist, we're actually not switching it up this week, and we're going to start with the track info, as Emma forgot to mention.
As always.
Get it out of him. So, the race name for this weekend, the official race name, is the Formula One Gulf Air Bahrain Grand Prix 2025. The circuit that we're at is the Bahrain International Circuit, and the first Grand Prix was held here in 2004. The drivers did 57 laps around the circuit, and one lap is 5.412 kilometers or 3.36 miles.
I'd say the average time it takes to do a lap is like a minute 30 something,
Yeah.
depending on the weather.
There are sorry, my notes messed up. There are 15 turns, and then the race distance for this entire race is 308.238 kilometers or 191.53 miles. The lap record, which I'm pretty sure is still in place, this season, as you guys know, there's no point for fastest lap, so it's not really like something they like always put on the screen right away.
Yeah.
I don't even know who got it.
I have no idea.
This week, but they got rid of that point. I don't know why. It comes and goes. So the lap record was placed in 2005 by Pedro de la Rosa in a McLaren.
He's Spanish.
And he did it in a minute and 31.447 seconds. Again, I'm not sure if that's been broken. I don't think it was. They made like a big deal about it being broken last weekend by Kimi.
So I don't think
at
it was.
Suzuka,
Yeah.
so I don't think it was. There are 3 DRS zones here, so that is something that kind of adds to why so many people get excited. DRS means passing, means more battles. It's the whole reason why they introduced it. So DRS detection zone 1 is right before turn 1, and then activation is between turns 3 and 4. DRS detection zone 2 is right before turn 9, and activation is between turns 10 and 11. And then the final DRS detection zone, zone 3, is right before turn 14, and activation is, as per usual, in that start-finish straight between turns 15 and 1. So that really adds to like the maneuverability that the drivers have. I think last weekend, Suzuka only has 1 DRS. I have to go double check my notes, but that just kind of shows you why so many people get excited about Bahrain. Is just the opportunity that we don't always get at the older races. And again, my thoughts on some of the older races. Cough, cough, Monaco.
Okay.
I'll get over it.
Anything else for track info?
Nope, that's it.
All right, now we're going to get into practice. Don't worry, guys. I'm going to remember track info next time, I think.
Probably not. This practice rundown is going to be pretty fast. You guys know Bahrain is where they just did, days of preseason testing. Yes, the temperature was drastically different, but, there's not as much intense testing, I feel like, as they have to do at this track compared to others.
Well, and like I said at the beginning, FP1 and FP3 were kind of like throwout sessions for the teams. So, like, the actual drivers themselves weren't going to learn much from FP1 and FP3 because of how hot it was during those sessions. So, in FP1 MC.
Yeah, so in FP1, there was a massive influx of non-F1 drivers. So you had a bunch of drivers, reserve drivers, come in and do one of their allotted sessions. We've gone through this.
Their rookie sessions.
They're given, I think each car has to do like
two a season.
So, let me just run down who was out of their car and who was in their car. So, in Max Verstappen's Red Bull, you have Ayumu Iwasa. He's been in a lot of the V-Carb socials.
We've seen a bunch of his stuff.
We've seen him. I think we've talked about him in the past. But a driver, he's been around Red Bull for a little bit. Charles Leclerc's Ferrari had Dino Beganovic.
Sure.
Don't know anything about that person. I'm sorry, Dino.
This is the first time we've ever heard his name.
George Russell's Mercedes had Fred Vesti. Love to see Fred. Fernando Alonso's Aston Martin had Felipe Drugovich. He's been a reserve driver, I feel like, with Aston for a while.
Yeah.
Ollie Behrman's Haas had a switch up.
Yep.
And we saw Rio Hirakawa in a Haas, which last
Yes.
weekend where was he? Alpine?
He was in Alpine,
Alpine?
yeah.
And it was announced this week that he actually switched from Alpine, which have a
Exorbitant amount.
like a soccer team of reserve drivers at this point. And he went over to Haas, which,
It makes sense because he's also done stuff with Toyota Gazoo in the past. And now Haas has that relationship with Toyota Gazoo, so it makes sense that he would be a reserve driver for Haas.
Also, look up his career. He is a World Drivers' Championship champion in his own runnings.
In WEC?
I think so. I have to double check. Yeah.
Okay.
WEC or Le Mans? I don't know. We'll have to double check.
Okay.
And then in Carlos Sainz's Williams, Luke Browning was driving that car for this session,
which we've seen him before.
So the only things I had was that Kimi had an issue early on, so he went back into the garage, and then this was obviously the first session, so we started to see that grip, especially with this heat,
it was non-existent.
Was not, like, basically ice skates for the rear wheels. So to top the free practice 1 session, it was Lando, Pierre, and Lewis. Nothing really
Something
special.
that they did talk about, though, that the commentators found interesting was almost every one of the top teams had a different driver, had like a rookie driver in a car for FP1, except for McLaren. And the commentators were saying that it's interesting because you've done testing on this track. This is kind of a throwaway session. So, like, why would you not just have a rookie in? And they were saying that they think that the chance is that they're really trying to go all in on this beginning of the season, like try to make it
grab
fantastic.
Up all the points we can
and like get as much mileage in the car as possible, just because they're not sure how upgrades are going to go in the end. And I mean, last year, when you really break it down, if Lando had been successful for the first half of the season, like winning races for the first half of the season, like he was in the second half, he would have had a much closer chance at beating Max in the World Championship, in the Drivers' Championship.
Yeah.
And so I think they're trying to give themselves the best chance now in case it comes down to it in the end.
I mean, that's one way to play it, but I also wonder too if I mean, it's an IndyCar weekend, and I know Pato is one of their reserve drivers, so
yeah, that's true.
Their reserve drivers might just have been busy.
Well, they also have like academy drivers too.
No, I know. Yeah, I mean, it's curious. Especially because whenever Lando specifically talked about the car, he's talked about how perfect it feels, and
he also talks about how he's struggling though. Like, it's a harder car to drive this year than the past.
Yeah. Would love him to divulge upon what that means. But
yeah.
Alas. So free practice 2, there was only 2 really things to note. Max appeared to struggle with the car more this session, and it would kind of continue throughout the rest of the weekend. And then some really big drama that if I hadn't been watching and hearing the pundits get so like, this is a bigger deal than like it is. I don't think I would have understood like the severity of what happened. So long story short, like I think I would have just been like, oh, something wasn't put in right, but like I don't think I would have just moved past it type situation. I don't know, maybe.
What happened, MC?
So, Fernando's steering wheel just like literally came out as he was on one of the straights. I don't think he was doing a fast lap. I think he was just doing a warm-up lap.
Yep.
But you're just kind of watching him, and I was about to
all of a sudden
pretend to hold a steering wheel and realizing we're filming a podcast. But basically you see him, and then it just kind of like pops out the way you would imagine a steering wheel would like slide right out of position. And Davide Vasecchi was one of the pundits for F1 TV this weekend, which F1 TV,
you need to have him more
10
often.
10 out of 10, him and Ruth just like permanently keep them, please. He got like really upset about it because it was kind of brought back to the fact that, the FIA is willing to sit here and fine €10,000 for, some literal bullshit, but then when it comes to like actual safety, where are your standards? And this was basically like a huge safety issue.
Well, because
because
Davide made the point where, like, luckily Fernando wasn't on a push lap, but if Fernando had been on a push lap and he was trying to make the turn and he was going at, I don't know, 180 miles an
he
hour.
tries to turn
He tries to
right,
turn, his steering wheel
flies
comes off. He's going 180
straight.
miles an hour straight into the barriers and could have died.
Yeah. And so it is a very severe issue.
I don't even know how that happens.
It was
They haven't
never
explained.
it was never like really further explained. And then from what I remember when we were watching the session, like Fernando went back to the garage, got out of his car, and was like livid.
I would be.
So yeah, and it further confused everyone because Jolyon Palmer, who used to be an F1 driver, Davide, they all kind of were like even unsure how this happened because
Yeah.
the drivers are typically the ones to put the steering wheel back in place. I mean, you always see them pulling it out and putting it back in when they're getting in and out of the vehicle. So I don't know. Would love an explanation, but unfortunately I don't think we'll ever get one. And
No.
Aston Martin is,
I think Adrian Newey's going to need to stop for a second working on next year's car and need to help them this year.
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No thoughts.
So to wrap up practice for FP3, no one was really in a rush to get into this session. It's the last session on a track that everyone kind of knows at this point. But one thing that did happen that was kind of random was Charles lost his mirror. Just like like came off. So not sure about that. I mean, it's not the first time we've seen. I mean, think about the V carb.
Didn't Ferrari bring a new
races
floor
ago.
for this too?
I can't remember.
I think Ferrari brought a new floor for this weekend to try out, which is like crazy for one of the flyaway races to bring like a whole new upgrade like that. I'm pretty sure that they did.
Yeah, I would have to double check, but unfortunately, I can't remember.
Yeah.
So Charles lost his mirror, and then George spun out at one point and was quoted saying that it was the worst grip he's ever had in an F1 car. So that just kind of shows you how difficult the track was for these guys, even though, it's been worked on for the last, how many hours, especially because I think there was a bunch of
there was F2 this weekend.
Yeah, F2 support leagues. So to top off that session, it was Oscar, Lando, and Charles. So that's all I really have for practice.
All right, we're going to get into quali now. Q1. There was, at the very beginning of Q1, a very interesting situation that was going on. Everybody's already out on track, or they're about to leave to go out on track, and Esteban Ocon is standing outside of his car in the garage, and they're literally trying to put his seat in the car still.
Yeah, no one was really sure what was happening, especially as, like, you see everyone lining up as the lights go green, and Esteban's not even in the vehicle. So it definitely had people stressed because Haas has been, in my opinion, a little underperforming at the beginning of this season. They've
based off of how they were last year.
Yeah, based off of how they were last year. Granted, they have a rookie, they have a whole
two brand new drivers.
Yeah. So wiggle room. But it definitely had people a little like, he might only have one chance, which is never great. And it doesn't make it better in Haas.
Yeah.
So it had people stressed, but luckily Esteban was able to eventually get out. So.
Yeah. And then, so like we said, during all of the free practice sessions, the grip was extremely low. This did not really improve very much throughout the weekend, even though there were the support series. And
I think it was just too hot. Like, I don't even think it was the track. I think it was like the Pirellis just could not.
Well, and they had the hardest, tires. So Yeah, it was definitely interesting. But off at the very beginning, like as he's doing his first flyer lap, Max goes off at I couldn't even figure out what turn. Um, but he ended up then because he just basically then shredded his tires by going off track, had to go back in to get new tires. This also happened to Yuki right afterwards. And so neither one of them set a proper time in their first run, and they both had to go in, change tires, and then go back out and really only have one run in Q1 to try to make it. I do want to say a huge shout out just now to Yuki. I think last weekend he was getting adjusted to the new car, and people were really harsh on his race performance, I felt like. And then this weekend, I think that his performance was very close to what Max's was.
Yeah, the Red Bull struggled. Both Red Bulls. The
Both.
car
In the
really
same way,
struggled.
too.
I also think I think it was like David Coulthard, but someone basically was mentioning like, of course, all of these guys are going to come in with this like confidence that I can do the job better than the last
Yeah.
guy. And so I think it's the same grace that we're giving drivers like Esteban Ocon and his Haas and Carlos Sainz and the Williams. Give these drivers some grace. The grace that their team's not even affording them. So,
Yeah.
I agree. I think with all the chatter going on, it was still a good performance.
I think Yuki had the ability to listen to all the chatter over this last week and let it get to him. And based off of the way that he was racing this weekend, I don't think he was listening to it. I think he was very much head down. I need to focus.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. Those were my main notes for Q1. Do you have anything else?
No, just was a pretty typical, like, I feel like nothing crazy majorly happened. But knocked out of that session, unfortunately, for the first time this season, we saw Alex Albon get out in Q1. Liam Lawson, Gabriel Bortoleto, Lance Stroll, and unfortunately Ollie Behrman.
So both Alex and Ollie were very much struggling during qualifying with their cars. It seemed like they were just not able to find the grip that they needed. I think that overall the Williams, this was not a track that really suited them. I think the first 3 races of the year they've had such great performances, especially Alex. They were hoping that they were going to perform better, especially because during preseason testing, Carlos had the fastest time out of anybody. But again, this is a very different condition than preseason testing, so it's hard to really compare it to that. So I think that maybe this just wasn't the right track for them.
I mean, it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Like, there's gonna be tracks, and we're gonna see every team struggle at different ones.
Yeah.
So.
And then Ollie, his post-qualifying interview, y'all, I really hate seeing especially the rookies, be Eeyore.
I have to, like...
I understand they're really hard on themselves. I get it.
I was going to say, think about
I
how
would be
many
the same way.
times we had quali and we didn't do as well as we thought.
Yeah.
And we all sat around like...
I would cry.
Sickly children,
Yeah.
you know? Like, we would just sit around and be forlorn and contemplate the meanings of 7th or 10th grade.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I get it. But, anyways, Q2. So basically, immediately into it, we were so excited for Esteban to move into Q2.
You know what? Here's the thing. The Haas's really came out of the ashes like a phoenix after this quality.
Yeah, they really were like, y'all haven't spoken about us for the last few races.
Yeah.
You're going to talk about us now. Esteban crashed basically right away with 11 minutes left to go, and that caused a red flag. That was right when Yuki was in the middle of a flyer. I think Max was in the middle of a flyer. Like, a bunch of people were in the middle of them, and obviously they had to abort those laps and go into the pit lane. And there's actually a penalty that happened because of this time frame, basically. So when this happens, when a red flag comes out, you go into your garage.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Okay,
Yeah. You
don't
don't just go into the pit lane, you go into the garage. And then you're told at a certain time, then you can finally line up in the pit lane to exit to go out on track.
But you're told by the marshals, like, you can't.
You can't just line up.
Decide.
Well, I think Mercedes just decided. I'm not really sure how they ended up there, but both Mercedes ended up lining up in the pit lane right away, which was odd.
Nico Hulkenberg commented on it. They shared the radio message between Nico and his engineer, and Nico said something along the lines of like, "Looks like the Mercedes are pretty eager," and his engineer was like, "Yeah, I don't know what they're doing, but we haven't gotten the all clear to go, so like that's on them." So it's like
Yeah.
at that point, everyone just kind of was like, "What are you doing here?"
So after qualifying, we find out that they each got a one place grid penalty for that, which makes sense.
Well, and didn't Nico Hulkenberg also get like his time deleted or something? Like
After the fact.
after the
Let's
fact.
talk about that.
Yeah.
So anything else happen in Q2?
Um no, that's all I have.
So we'll talk about that now, the Nico Hulkenberg thing, because I
Sorry,
thought there was more.
I had to read through my notes quick. I'm sorry.
So Nico Hulkenberg, his lap time from Q1, I think it's his fastest lap time, and ended up about 3 hours or so. No, 45 minutes. 3 hours.
17 days.
Time after the qualifying, all of qualifying was done. We find out that his lap time was deleted from Q1, which means obviously he would not have been able to move on to Q2. Alex Albon would have been able to move on to Q2 and then potentially on to Q3 if he performed really well.
This is one of those moments where maybe those 10,000 euros would have really come into handy if you had permanent marshals to make these decisions. But what do I know as a spectator?
This is extremely problematic within the sport because
No other
especially
sport
like
is
imagine
like
this happened in Monaco where you have no capability of passing others and now you just ruined basically someone's race, not just qualifying but someone's race because you can't figure out when you're going to give a penalty to somebody or when you're going to delete a time. Track limits, there's sensors on the freaking cars. What do you mean you didn't find out until 45 minutes after qualifying? So now you could have potentially just ruined Alex Albon's race and the potential for him to start further up in the track. It pisses me off so much,
just
especially
be
with
like,
the midfield teams where like
it
one grid place could mean so much to them.
yeah, it's, I mean, you guys know our feelings. It's, and to my knowledge, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking of most mainstream sports in America. There's no other sport where they're making delayed decisions to change the outcomes. I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to have a Super Bowl champion and 3 hours later you fucking change it because we reviewed the footage and like it would be anarchy in America if you
Or
started
even the
doing,
FIFA World Cup, like it would
it's
literally be like making a call for like one of the group stage games after the fact, and then it completely changes who won the group
well, and
stage.
it's honest to God, it's shit like this that like ruins the sport, that makes it probably miserable for the drivers, and just like honestly a little upsetting for the spectators because it's like, I'm sorry, you're considered one of the most technologically advanced sports in the world and you can't make a decision until 45 minutes after fucking qualifying. Like, I don't know, again, maybe use some of that fine money to like actually build out all these things, but again, what do I know?
Okay, we go on to Q3.
Oh, out of Q2, knocked out
Yes.
was, it was actually, he did have a really good, I feel like, quality performance, but Jack just missed Q3. Isaac, Fernando, Esteban, and Nico. So I feel like some names we kind of typically see knocked out of Q2, but I feel like Jack had a pretty, like,
His
he
Q1
just missed
performance was like he was like
sixth.
yeah, he was
Yeah.
really up there. Yeah. So for Q3, normal start to the actual qualifying, and then we see Lewis and Kimmy's times both deleted. So they were the only ones without times on the lap. Oh my gosh, on lap. They were the only ones without lap times on the board. Thank you.
Got there.
I needed to get there. Which is just funny because I thought it was funny. It was Lewis being gone and Kimmy being his replacement.
I didn't really put that together, but now that you're saying it, it is funny.
Okay.
Max had a pretty terrible lap. I feel like again,
Not good.
just not a great weekend for Red Bull
Yuki
whatsoever.
Tsunoda was the first time the second Red Bull made it on to a Q3 this whole season.
Yeah, and then unfortunately, a lot of people did think that it was going to be a 1-2 lockout for McLaren, but Lando wasn't able to put in like a really good final lap, which is something I feel like we've seen in the past with Lando, is like he'll make a
Correct.
few mistakes and it kind of just like really hits his quality like it really bad. So,
Well, and he's just not typically very good. This weekend aside, and like a few other times, his starts are not the strongest. And so, like, his grid placement, to be honest, it doesn't really, as long as he's in the top 8, it doesn't really matter.
yeah.
With the speed of the McLaren and the strategy,
Yeah.
he kind of, even when he starts on pole, he kind of drops back to like 4th.
Yeah. No, and I mean, we'll see. We'll get into it, but you'll see that even giving him a penalty doesn't really
Didn't really do anything.
do anything.
So
the lineup ends up being, and I don't remember how they set up on the grid earlier today, but when it came to like the penalties that
okay. Do you want me to read it?
well,
I have
no,
it.
because
I have it in the correct order.
so do you have it from your photo from when we were watching yesterday?
Yeah, I have it in the correct order.
Oh,
of,
okay.
like,
So
yeah.
then you read it, and then I'll see if my order is
So the top 10 starting order was after George and Kimmy had their penalty, their grid place penalty with 1 spot each. The starting order was Oscar.
You don't have it, do you?
Oh my gosh, I thought I had it. I thought I put it incorrect. Okay, well it was Oscar, Charles, George, Pierre, Kimmy, Lando, Max, Carlos, Lewis, and then Yuki.
Yeah. So that's how it ended up lining up.
Well, yeah, because they didn't announce the whatchamacallit, the grid place penalty until later.
Yeah, another one.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that'll do it. And actually something that was just posted, that I did not see this. Carlos Sainz has been given a 3. Well, so this is for the actual results of the race, but I just saw this right now, so I'm going to say it so I don't forget. Carlos Sainz has been given a 3-place grid drop penalty for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. This is because he failed to serve his 10-second time penalty during the race for forcing another driver off the track. He DNF'd people.
Okay, I actually have a thought about that when we get to it, and remind me, because it was just something about Williams that kind of confused me. But anyways,
we'll get to it. Okay, we're going to get to the main race now because there's a lot to talk about.
Yes. I love when we get to this leg of, or I like when it's in the morning in our time zone.
Yeah, but it was, so the race this morning was at like 10 a.m. for us.
It was a little too late. I do like a 7 a.m. race.
I like an 8 a.m. race.
I like 7 when you're like, it's over, and you're like, wow, it's only 9? I have the whole day.
No, 8 a.m. feels perfect because I have time to wake up at 7 a.m. to make myself my breakfast and watch the pre-race show.
Yeah.
And then this way, when the actual start of the race happens, I have my hands free to start taking notes.
True.
Where 10 just was so late for us.
Yeah, it's kind of ruined our day, but it's fine.
Well, sometimes, like Mexico, is like 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Which I don't really mind. I mean, that's what like IndyCar's at today.
Yeah. Okay. So the race begins, obviously. And Charles and like a few other people are on mediums, but basically everybody else is on softs, which I thought was a very interesting start. I was not expecting that.
It was announced that Charles was on mediums. The look of disgust that Emma had was just priceless, because she was like, "What? Are you kidding?"
It wasn't disgust. What do you mean?
You just had I guess disbelief is a better word. You were just kind of shocked that this is what Ferrari
Because
decided.
immediately I realized that Ferrari had the potential. They were thinking about potentially doing a 1-stop.
Which
that's what Charles wanted to do in the middle of the race.
Yeah.
After the fact, he said, "I'm glad that we didn't do that." But because they started on mediums, I was like, "Oh my gosh, they're trying to do it."
So also Emma thinks right away that there's gonna be a crash off the start.
Yeah, we haven't had
A messy
a crazy
in my
start,
opinion, yeah.
which is good.
Yeah.
We don't want crashes, but I just felt like it was given that energy. There was something in the air for me where I was like, this feels, I don't know, something doesn't feel right. It's the fact that there's no grip right now.
Yeah.
All of the
Yeah.
rookies are kind of in the middle of the pack together.
There were a lot of scary factors.
Yeah,
that
I was just like,
definitely-
Fernando's steering wheel could come out again. You never know.
Yeah, it's not guaranteed, apparently.
Yeah, thought it was, but yeah. So this was actually a great surprise. Lando has an incredible start.
George locked up, which I think really affected like everything around there.
Yeah.
Because it was like all of a sudden George locked up, but he still got to move to second. Then Lando moves up to third from sixth off the start. Charles then goes down to fourth, and Pierre drops down to sixth. So it was like boom, boom, boom. Everyone's changing all of a sudden.
And then we get a replay of Max Verstappen being a little snitch. And
oh, yeah.
so Lando ends up getting a 5-second time penalty after
For
this
false
because
start.
he had like his front axle just over his grid box, and Max Verstappen, being Max, is like, Lando's in front of his grid box, and reports it on the radio. And then they like, okay, we're gonna report it. Karma.
Yeah.
Karma. It
She's-
happens.
She's a bitch.
Yeah, in the words of Jojo Siwa.
I'm sure someone said it before, Jojo
Uh,
Siwa.
Oh yeah, 100%. But it's just this funny thing about Jojo Siwa. Anyways, yeah, Charles did drop down to fourth. Max dropped down to sixth, which I think is why he was salty about the
I
start.
had Max move down to eighth at one point too.
I think he did after
Yeah.
because then after he had, I think, a front lockup,
Yeah.
like a bunch of people had front lockups, and then he moved down to eighth. But off the start, he was in sixth.
Yeah.
And then Lando was obviously being investigated for the false start, being out of position. I was worried at first that he was in the wrong grid box, to be honest, because when they did like the overpan of it, I was like, wait a second, is he in the right grid box?
I thought it was like when they said that it was a false start, I thought like he hit the gas a little bit. That's what my first initial fear was, but yeah. Then they showed us it from every angle, and we're like, yeah, we gotta say
We can see.
he's over the line.
It is in fact true.
Yeah.
He did do that.
Yeah.
By lap 4, Lewis was already saying that the grip was really poor on the medium tires. So this was something that was really interesting. For the first time like ever, the softs were like the prime tire that people liked.
So the softs are great, I think, for let's average it out like 13-ish laps.
Yeah.
And then I think they started to die. But then the mediums, unfortunately, what killed the mediums, in my opinion, from a strategy perspective, was that it took a while for them to get to that sweet spot. And while it did help, I mean, we did see certain advantages that Charles like ended up having throughout the race. I don't think it gave that oomph that the softs were giving that really helped everyone else.
Yeah. Lap 7, we see Isaac actually go into the pit for new tires. This was incredibly early. The V-carb strategy today, wasn't it?
Yeah, V-carb, I think it's similar to like Williams. I think we're just going to have like some teams just be really, really confident for a while and then just have one or two races where it's not really great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lewis and Carlos by lap 9, they were both battling. Do you remember the battle?
Not really.
I think it was just around a turn, like Carlos passed Lewis, but then
Yes.
Lewis passed Carlos.
Yeah, it went back and
it was like a
forth.
little dicey too. Like it was
Yeah.
very close. Like I thought they hit at one point, to be honest.
Carlos was fighting for his life this race. He
Yeah.
was really like, I'm gonna give it my all.
I just don't think the Williams had the speed this race.
No.
Yeah.
The other thing to note is that at this point, Oscar is just he's gone. He's pulling a max. He's leaving everyone in the dust.
Which was pretty great.
Yeah, it was nice to see.
Yeah. Lap 11, we see a lot of people finally go into pit because so many people started on softs. They were all going to have to go in sooner rather than later.
And this is where just like the bad luck and the karma just keeps coming.
Yeah, so First person who I wrote down that pitted was Lando. He did serve his 5-second time penalty. Didn't really affect him all that much. And then Max goes into pit. And as we all know, Red Bull is famous for their incredibly fast, efficient pit stops. This time that he goes into pit, gets his new tires on.
Before Emma continues, this one isn't on the mechanics.
No.
This pit stop. The next one might be. But this particular issue is not on them, so props to them.
So when the driver gets released, there's a light that they look at that will tell them if it's okay for them to go.
For safety reasons.
Understandable. We don't need people crashing in the pit lane.
Not the greatest place.
No. And the light was not turning green. It was just staying red and flashing yellow. And so Max pressed on the gas and then stopped immediately because it was red still.
Which indicates don't go, as we know.
And then he eventually goes. That light is broken, we find out. It's not working for Red Bull.
Because
then
happens.
The next person, Yuki, comes into pit. It happens to him as well.
And so these are not the typical 2.3 seconds, 2.7. It was, what was Max's, Emma?
Max's was a 4-second pit stop, which is so ironic because then you had Lando who served his 5-second penalty and had a 2-second, it had a 1.9 second pit stop or something like that. And so he was stopped for 6 and almost 7 seconds.
So in
not
essence,
much more.
Max also kind of served Lando's time
unintentionally.
penalty.
Yeah. Well, it happens.
Yeah.
Technical problems. A lot of technical problems today, actually.
Yeah, technology was against people.
Yeah.
George pits at lap 13, and Oscar still hasn't at this point, and he has a little over 6 seconds of time ahead of Charles, who is in second. Oscar finally pits at lap 15, and this was a 2.3 second pit stop for McLaren.
Good.
They were just on it today with Oscar.
And he came out after pitting. He came out still in third place.
Yeah. Which, anyone else who pitted was just tumbled down to, 10.
Yeah. Even worse most of the time, I feel like.
Yeah.
What was it? Both Ferraris did pit on lap 18, and they tumbled down the order. Like we were just saying, most people were tumbling.
Well, and that was the thing, too, is that you could see at that point, like Emma said, Oscar came out in third, and he was on mediums. And that's what the two Ferraris were on. And you could just see that the new mediums were like light years faster.
Yeah.
Than the, 17 lap old tires that the Ferraris were on. And Oscar just walked. And you could just see that, unfortunately, what I think Ferrari wanted just was not going to happen in 57 laps.
No. Lap 20, we actually see Kimi Antonelli pass Max Verstappen. Max was just struggling so much, but it was really cool to see a rookie pass Max Verstappen.
Yeah, love to see it.
It was cool. I hate to say it, but it was cool. I don't hate to say it, actually. And Max was complaining about the brakes just not really working at all.
He was complaining about the brakes. He also at lap 21 mentioned that everything felt like it was overheating. So I don't know, maybe there's just... I don't know, maybe we've kind of hit that point, and wouldn't it kind of be crazy if we have crossed the line of Max can drive the car to it is now so undrivable that Max can't even do it?
Maybe.
I feel like that's kind of where we're at if this continues.
Yeah.
So.
Kimi and Isaac, at this point, we're only on lap 23. They were both given a black and white flag for track limits. So if you do go over track limits one more time, you're given a 5-second time penalty. I don't think either one of them were.
I don't think either one of them ended up getting it, but it was something that I think Liam Lawson ended up getting the black and white flag. And Lando Norris ended up getting the black and white flag.
he
I'm
did?
sure there were a few more.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, because at one point Lando, it was closer to the end of the lap or the race with I think like 5 or 7
I think he was
laps left.
threatened with the potential of 5 seconds, but he got the black and white
He
flag.
got the black and white flag, which is a
Yeah.
threat. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, you've got one more chance.
Yeah.
So, but I don't think, to my knowledge, no one actually got that. Oh, no, Jack did. Jack got that 5-second
And I think there's
penalty.
somebody else.
Anyways.
I wrote it all down. Lap 24, we see Lando and Charles starting to battle. Lando was obviously coming up behind Charles, I believe it was.
Mhm.
Lando had to really make his way back up the track because he did. Something we forgot to completely
Charles.
mention at the very beginning. Lando technically passed Lewis off track, and so he had to give the position back to Lewis before the stewards even told him to. McLaren just was like, just give it back now, and you'll pass him again, which he eventually did. But Lando was just trying to pass Charles, and I just really feel like Lando struggles a lot with trying to pass people sometimes.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's what we've all been told by McLaren. The car is dog shit in dirty air. I mean, what car isn't? But I also think when it comes to them passing, you see it even more. Like,
Yeah.
it's even more relevant.
Yeah. And at this point, my dog was crying, so I had to take him outside, so I didn't take notes for the next 7 laps. So MC.
So yeah, we actually got that order mixed up. So Charles was walking on Lando, and then at lap 25, Charles passes Lando.
Yes.
So this is where the second Red Bull pit stop becomes an issue, and unfortunately, this was on the mechanics, I think, or machinery, but this wasn't an issue with the light. So Max pits at lap 27, and it is terrible.
It was like a 6 point something second.
6.2 seconds. It looks like there was an issue with one of the tires, and I don't think anyone was expecting this. Max comes out dead last, 20th. Like,
Yeah.
my jaw hit the ground.
DC literally was like, if somebody's watching this, they should take a photo because
there's
when
not many
have you
times.
ever seen Max Verstappen in P20?
So the crazy thing is, too, to kind of just, like, show you how insane and how, like, the tides have turned. On lap 29, Oscar had a 6.7 second lead. That is Red Bull of old level
That's what Max was
leads.
last year.
Yeah. So, really interesting. The other thing that happens, and this kind of really isn't, we're Williams fans, so just frustrating. But Carlos and Yuki, it looks like they might have had contact, and then it was later confirmed that they did have contact. And this was at turn 1. And then pretty closely after this, because crap fell off of Carlos's
this was
car.
lap 31.
Yeah. The safety car comes out at lap 32 for debris. That was at turn 3. And so it's twofold. A lot of people feel like this could have been more of a virtual safety car situation.
Yeah, it was surprising for a full safety car to come out because usually when it's debris like this, it's a virtual safety car.
Yeah, and so for the full safety car to come out, I'm sure that there are teams that are livid because the timing was perfection.
For McLaren. But shit for Ferrari.
Oscar just goes right into the pits.
Yeah, he was right there.
He was right there. It was perfect timing. And then something that kind of like blew mine and Emma's minds was that Mercedes.
Well, so before the safety car,
you go.
Mercedes had put Kimi on softs, and we were like, what?
For how many more laps is he gonna be on softs?
That was his second pit stop already.
Yeah.
And then the safety car comes, and he goes in again for a new pair of softs. And it was just like, huh?
Mercedes really loves that kid on softs.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I think because Max, after his first pit stop, had put hards on. And everybody saw that he was struggling on hards. And he was kind of the guinea pig for people to see not to use hards. And from then on, like, barely anybody put hards on.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to happen. There's always going to be that one person that, like, unfortunately has to be.
Unfortunately suffers.
Yeah. You go.
So yeah, Oscar went in to the pit. So did George, Charles, Lando, and like half of the grid basically. if not more than half.
Take advantage of that safety car.
Yeah. George actually got softs put on as well, not just
Mhm.
Kimmy, and he says to his race engineer, this is a bit audacious to have softs on. And then Lando's race engineer tells him that George is already worried about the softs. And Lando's response was, I don't know why he is. Like, the
They're
softs were
mega
mega.
tire.
And the commentators were like, so now we have drivers commenting on race strategy of other drivers. Like, what is George's race engineer going to now tell George on the radio that Lando thinks that they're going to be good, so you're good to go?
Yeah, it was definitely funny
It
because
was
it was
interesting.
like, are we in the position to be commenting? But
Yeah.
luckily they were able to clear the debris pretty quickly, so the race restarted at lap 35, so it was only a few amount of
Yeah. Like 4
turns.
laps.
Which also F1 TV, for all of the many Ubers fans that watch this, keep the safety car footage of the guys driving it
That was
on.
hysterical.
It was so fun. They look like they were having so much fun, and I'm sure you can't, but if you could give them the opportunity to just like blast music, go for
I
it.
would love that.
Right off of the start though, it is a battle for third.
Yeah. Both
Lewis
Lando and both Ferraris
are just fighting. So Lewis is able to move past Lando, but then Lando gets it back, and then Charles is able to maintain third.
Yeah.
So it was just a lot of intensity.
No. Okay,
And
so
this
this
is
was when
where-
Lando had to give the place back to Lewis. I thought it was earlier on.
Yeah, so it looked like he might have passed with all four tires out of bounds, and I feel like McLaren just like wanted to play it safe, didn't want any further penalties, and so they just decided to give the spot back. And honestly, the car's fast enough, like the confidence
It's
should be
fine.
there.
And this is when something really weird started to happen for George. His timing transponder was not working anymore. So all of a sudden we see George tumble down to P20, and we were like, what's going on with George?
Well, and the weird thing was, so we had the race on one screen, and then we had Lando's footage, and then we like to have the map, the track showing where everyone is. And all of a sudden, it was like
You
he
couldn't see George
dropped down
anymore.
the timing tower, but no, at this point, you could still see George, and he was still behind in second. So I'm sitting there, and I'm like, why is he on the map, but then he tumbled down to 20th? And that's when they basically announced, like, he's starting to have technical issues.
Yeah. So he eventually, you couldn't see basically where he was in the race, on the timing, on the actual like track map.
Which I genuinely thought that this is something that was just affecting like spectators. Like maybe there was some data issue or like
No, it affects
communication
the
issue.
drivers as well.
And it was affecting all of the teams. Like no one could see George's times.
Well, and eventually something like completely whacked out his car, and like DRS just opened on its own, like accidentally, which is the penalty that we still don't know the result of.
Yeah.
So,
around this point, so we're still in like the high 30s. Around this point, we finally get a visual of the damage that was done to Carlos's Williams, and it was pretty extensive. It was a big chunk. You could probably climb through that. It was just like a massive hole in the side of his car. And so this was what was weird for me was, and maybe the timing, just
well,
the what
because
was
Carlos was just given a
communicated.
10-second time penalty for forcing a car off track. He forced Antonelli off track.
But then
in a
he
restart.
DNF'd, and I was like, they should have done what like Checo's done in the
Apparently they
past.
did.
They had him serve
They
it.
served it, but I think you have to go back out and do one more lap.
Yeah, and
But I don't think they did that.
And I don't know if it was just like completely unsafe to do it, but I know like Checo in the past did that last season.
Well, and I think that means that the 3-place grid penalty is for next race.
It's their equivalent, yeah, because if you don't serve that penalty that race, it gets bumped to the next one.
Yeah.
So
we also found out around this time that Liam Lawson was given a 5-second time penalty for causing a collision with Hulkenberg. which I don't remember when that happened, but I think it was just like in a turn he just accidentally hit him, to
Yeah,
be honest.
they were really dishing out collision penalties, which
Yeah.
David Coulthard at one point was like, I don't think every touch needs to be penalized, which I kind of agree, but you know my thoughts on all that.
So Carlos did officially retire on lap 47. Lap 49.
Also, Emma at lap 47 fully said Lando's not going to pass Charles for third. She was like fully confident at lap 47. Lando
I was
wasn't going to do
convinced. I was convinced. Lap 49, we were seeing Lando actually try to battle Charles for third. And Charles did kind of push him off track a little bit, but like, not really. It was a little weird. Eventually, finally, lap 52, Lando finally passes Charles, which was surprising to me.
It was a really good move, in my opinion.
George's car basically was shitting the bed, which we'll talk about in our final thoughts because there's a lot to talk about there.
Well, and here's just my note to give you a little teaser. The entire time that Lando and Charles are battling, George is having technical issues. Not showing up on the map, his dashboard apparently isn't working, and he's now having gear shift issues.
Yeah, it was just not, it was a shit show. Yeah, George's DRS randomly pops open. Also,
he gets an infringement.
Because nobody knows where he is on the track, technically on the times, Lando can't figure out when he's allowed to use DRS on George.
Basically, Lando's engineer announces that, like, it is at your discretion. When you believe that we are within 1 second of him, you can use DRS, but, like, it has to be within that, because otherwise they would get a DRS infringement as well.
And then there was a few people that got black and white flags in the end. Yuki and Max both got that in the end, but they were totally fine. And then the final results of the race were...
Yeah, so Oscar, no surprise, ended up winning. I actually don't remember how big the gap was, but it was pretty impressive. George, as of right now...
I think it was like 16 seconds.
Yeah, it was very intense. As of 2:25 p.m. on Sunday, George is still in second. We'll see if that changes. To be determined. Third was Lando, who, just take it. You're on the podium. It's okay. Not every time. You don't have to win every time. It's okay.
He still was like depressy in his post-race interview.
Charles ended up getting fourth, Lewis in fifth, Max was in sixth, which, I have to give it to him. He did after that pit. He came out on 20th. So there was a moment where I thought he was going to be in the bottom 10, but, maybe that'll be next weekend. Pierre finally won those points for Alpine, and he was in 7th. Esteban was in 8th. Yuki was in 9th.
Go off, Yuki.
Ollie was in 10th. So really exciting to see. Double Haas points, but then also
for
really
the first
good
race
to
of the
see
season,
that second Red Bull.
Yeah, double Red Bull points.
So the bottom 10 was Kimmy in 11th, Alex in 12th. I'm pretty sure that Jack finished 13th.
Yeah, but he dropped down to 16th.
He drops down. So Nico was in 13th. Isaac, did I say Alex was in 12th?
I think so.
Alex Albon was in 12th. Nico was in 13th. Isaac was in 14th. 15th ended up being Jack because he was given that 5-second penalty for track limits at the end. Fernando was 16th. Liam was 17th.
Liam did get a 10-second time penalty for causing a collision. I don't know with who.
So that's
he was further up in the rankings, and then he dropped down in the end.
Lance was 18th, Gabriel was 19th, and Carlos DNF'd. So, unfortunately, I feel like Red Bull V-Carb really struggled a lot this weekend.
Red Bull V-Carb stake even more than usual. It just was a rough weekend for some teams.
Yeah, and it's evident, who's kind of leading the middle of the pack, but
yeah. All right, we're going to get into our final thoughts now. Okay. Final thoughts.
I was ecstatic for Haas. F1 TV interviewed what?
I just checked my phone to see if we got any alerts about stuff. Nico Hulkenberg was disqualified from Bahrain Grand Prix over a skid block breach.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so wait. Let's go back to the results, you guys. You're getting our reactions real time.
Well, I mean, he was in the bottom 10.
Yeah. So, that'd be great if that would open. Oh, good. My Gmail is not opening my notes. Wow. I was not expecting that.
I know. I did not think about that. I thought the Ferraris were going to get it.
Well, yeah, and I said that at one point to Emma. I was like, I'm nervous about the bottom of those Ferraris. Like, I'm worried that because there's a lot of dragging, it looks like. But, I mean, here's the thing. We just saw this affect Ferrari. It's not the first time that it's affected cars.
I know, but this is the first time twice in one season we've seen it happen, especially so fast.
Well, and I wonder if it's just those early days of setups.
It could also just be, this is the thing that they're focusing on this year, the FIA. 2 years ago, it was track limits.
Oh my god.
What was it last year?
Cursing,
and I feel like
they didn't like what McLaren was doing to certain, like...
I can't remember what their thing was last year.
But, anyways...
This year it could be skid block.
Did not expect Nico Hulkenberg to be disqualified.
I know, poor guy.
It's okay. There's
next
week.
Hopefully next week you'll have a better-ish car anyways.
But...
It would suck if you were on the podium and then got that.
Yeah.
That's happened before, as we know.
But
for them to already rule on that and not say anything about George Russell, I'm guessing that nothing's going to happen with George.
Yeah. So I would be surprised unless that was what their focus was on, and we're gonna get George's results in like 2 days.
They tell us at the start of the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix.
Oh, I mean,
it'd be crazy.
I wouldn't put it past them. No, I'm kidding. But no, I thought it was a really great weekend. I think unfortunately we saw some teams that have had a really, really good start, like VCarb and Williams. I think we saw larger struggles this weekend, but I also think we saw kind of more extreme temperatures than what anyone was expecting. I'm definitely just curious to see what's going to happen with Red Bull.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Yeah, like I said earlier.
I think based off of Max and Yuki's performance this weekend, I think Yuki's safe in that seat for right now. Because Yuki was so close to Max in the race the majority of the time.
I mean, it's the first time this season that they've had 2 cars in points. So if that doesn't save his ass, I don't know what will at this point. I don't know, like selling your soul to the devil.
I mean, I think he did that when he joined Red Bull.
Yeah, but I don't know what else he could do. And honestly, at this point, it's like, who else are you going to put in the car? Checo? I don't think he's going to come. Yeah, like, I don't know where your options lay, but
no,
I'm happy that he was able to perform, especially after like the frustration of
Japan.
So
yeah. I feel like there was more stuff that I wanted to talk about. Lewis did get driver of the day. I think Lewis is finally. He didn't have his happiest qualifying, but I think he's finally starting to gel a bit with the car a bit more.
Yeah,
like understand how to drive it.
Yeah, and it seems like the communication issues, I mean, at least it wasn't a focal point for what we were watching, so hopefully, again, it's, round 4?
Yeah.
Like, it takes time to figure out a new job. So.
Yeah. Very happy for Haas.
Io was...
He was so...
Like, it was just so nice to see a team principal speeches because I feel like sometimes some of them just like have an answer or just have some like long-winded answer. And it was just like exciting to see how like even with all the data and being an engineer and, being Haas, like it's just so exciting to see a team do well.
Yeah.
Even though they didn't win, it's still double points. It still puts them in a good position. And, I'm happy, so happy that Ollie's been performing so well.
I know I was really nervous for him after the first race because it like wasn't great, and then even at the end of last year when he stepped in and he raced for what was it, like Brazil or something, and it was raining so hard he was like, I'm trying to get to the finish line but I'm also trying not to die. I got really nervous for him with those races because I was worried that was gonna like break his confidence. But I do think in the actual race, I think his qualifying hasn't been the best, but I think the actual races he has performed quite well.
I also think there was one point in his in Io's um interview after the race where he basically, at least to my understanding around the question what he was saying, like they basically said something along the lines of like, how do you feel with these two drivers? And he was like, no regrets, like no doubt about it.
Well,
Like
yeah,
I
he was
can't
like, I wouldn't
imagine.
change
I
it for the
wouldn't change it
world.
for the world. And I think that's what was also refreshing. Again, for those that listened last week, you'll know that it's really frustrating to hear the lack of confidence from these team leaders who made the decision to choose those drivers, and to have this like totally opposite view of
Yeah.
Red Bull, to just have this utmost confidence in the two men that you decided to put in the car. It was like, damn, Haas, like way to have that,
Yeah.
like way to have the back of your drivers and to like be confident. And yeah, it was really nice to see. It was cute because F1 TV did all of like a few of the like radio messages when they ended the race,
Yeah,
and
so you heard Ollie's whole, and
Ollie
he had like 7 people jump on his
people
radio.
just kept jumping in. It was like his engineer, then it was Io, then it was his dad, then it was someone else, and it was just like it's so nice to see like the energy of a team,
Well, and
you
people were like,
know?
it might only be 1 point at the end of the day for 10th place, but like that's huge for them.
Huge for them. And I mean, you guys will see, like by mid race, I mean, the midfield could have a maximum of 50 points amongst them all, you know? It makes
Yeah.
a big deal. And
We just finished the 4th race and every single team has points on the board, which is more than last year. So
yeah.
it's really awesome.
Yeah.
Another team principal that I do want to mention because they said something really nice after qualifying was I think his name is Ollie Oaks.
Yeah.
He's the new team principal for Alpine. And one of the things that people have been talking about a lot this season is the potential that Jack is going to get replaced with Franco Colapinto or whatever. Um, and Ollie Oaks was asked about Jack's performance in qualifying, and he responded saying, like, he was at first talking about, like, Pierre and how great Pierre had done because he was in the top 10 and how it was very exciting. And then he was asked about Jack's, and Jack was like, and he mentioned Jack that he was really, really happy with Jack's performance. That, yeah, he didn't end up into Q3, but he started P11. He had an insane Q1 session where he was in the top 10, and he just has like consistent improvement each weekend, which is what they're looking for. And so at the end of the day, consistent improvement is more important than just like a one amazing race at the end. And so it made me feel a lot better for Jack because I feel like there's been a lot of pressure on him with the potential that he might lose his seat, and hearing a team principal say that they were very happy with his performance. And I mean, even at the end of the race this weekend, he was up there in the top 10 or like top 12 for a good chunk of the race. And he
Yeah.
just got unlucky at the end with the penalty.
Yeah, he also had there like where Jack was in the race, he had a lot of people breathing down his neck, and it was pretty tight where he
It was an
was.
intense section of the race.
But yeah, I mean, I'll say this time and time again. The drivers are chosen by you. Have confidence in them. A confident athlete can do incredible things. And we've seen it, and it's just it I'm gobsmacked at the inability for some of these guys to have confidence in their
Oh, yeah.
decisions. And it's, maybe it's less insecurity in the team and the driver and more, internalized insecurity, but that's something for them and their therapists. I just, I don't know. You got to give these kids a chance. And some of them are kids. They're rookies.
Yeah.
It's their first time in this environment. Everyone's explained that an F1 car is unlike anything else. Give people room to grow. Let people learn. And mistakes will be made. But at the end of the day, every success is met with mistakes from the past. You know, you got to learn from them and grow. If you're just going to keep tearing down your driver, then how the hell are they supposed to do it any better? You know, everything, like, we're one of 8 bajillion podcasts. There's 8 million people that are constantly analyzing everything that's said and done by these teams. You're surprised when your driver does well? I don't know. It's just like,
It's also like basic psychology. Negative reinforcement is far less as effective as a positive reinforcement.
yeah. You'd
So,
rather have a cookie than a slap against the head. Like, come
yeah.
on. It's easy, guys. But no, it was nice to see the confidence in some of the younger drivers this weekend from their team principals, because I feel like it was kind of a lacking theme from other teams.
Yeah.
But it's neither here nor there.
Yeah. So I think that's everything really for today. We are going to have a get ready for Saudi Arabia episode. We still don't really know what we're talking about yet because that race has only existed for a couple of years, but we're going to figure that one out. And make sure to go like, comment, subscribe, follow, do all the things.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.